Canadians say they need $1.7 million to retire. The average Canadian aged 55 to 59 has $37,600 in their tax-free savings account. One of those is a fantasy. The other is a fact. Neither is what you need. The real one is $412,500. Here is how it is built, and why the account it sits in decides whether you need twice that much. Start with where the $7 million came from, because it did not come from math. The Bank of Montreal runs an annual retirement survey. The 2026 edition, published in February, asked about 1,500 Canadians how much they think they need to retire comfortably. The average answer was $1.7 million. Last year, the same question got $1.54 million, so the target went up by $160,000 in 12 months, which is not something that happens to an actual calculation, it happens to a feeling. And the survey is honest about what it is. 36% of the people who gave that number also said they are unlikely to ever reach it, up from 29% the year before. 14% said they do not plan to retire at all. Look at the regional spread, and it stops being a plan entirely. British Columbia says $2.2 million. Ontario says $1.9 million. Alberta says $1.66 million. Quebec says about $1.24 million. Atlantic Canada says $928,000. So a retirement in Halifax costs $928,000, and the identical retirement in Vancouver costs $2.2 million. Housing explains part of that. It does not explain a spread of $1.3 million. What you are looking at is anxiety, measured by province, and then printed as a target. That number gets picked up by every finance outlet in the country for 2 months every spring, and it lands on a 52-year-old with $30,000 saved as a verdict. It is not a verdict. It is a mood ring with a dollar sign on it. The real number is smaller than that and harder than that. And it is built from 4 pieces: the floor, the gap, the multiplier, and the account. Get all 4 and you have your number. Miss the 4th one, and you will save twice as much as you need to and still not understand why it didn't work. But first, quickly, where you actually are. Because you cannot aim at a target from an unknown position. The Canada Revenue Agency publishes what Canadians hold in this account by age from the returns the banks file. The 2023 contribution year, released in 2025, is the freshest national data that exists. At 45 to 49, the average TFSA is $24,150. At 50 to 54, it is $30,190. At 55 to 59, $37,600. At 60 to 64, $45,109. At 65 to 69, $51,244. The national average across every holder in the country is $33,534, and the number nobody prints. The average unused contribution room at 55 to 59 is $52,972. The empty space is bigger than the money. That is true at every age band until 65, so the country believes it needs $1. $7 million, and it is walking around with $37,600 and a pile of unused room. That is the actual gap in Canadian retirement, and it is not a savings gap. It is an arithmetic gap. Let's build a real number. Piece 1. The floor is what shows up whether you saved or not. 2 things, and they are both indexed for life, which is a feature almost nothing else in your portfolio has. Canada Pension Plan. The maximum at 65 in the 2026 year is $1,507.65 a month. Ignore that number. It requires about 40 years of contributing at or near the ceiling, and the ceiling in the 2026 year is $74,600 of earnings. So if you took time off, worked part-time, raised kids, got laid off in 2009, or earned a normal Canadian income, you are not getting it. The average new Canadian starting CPP
at 65 in January of the 2026 year receives $925.35 a month. That is your number. Old age security. For the July to September 2026 quarter, full OAs is $751.97 a month if you are 65 to 74, and $827.17 add them. $1,677.32 a month. $20,127.84 a year. That is the floor. That is what Canada hands a median 65-year-old for showing up and having worked.
It is not nothing. It is roughly a bachelor apartment in Hamilton and groceries, with nothing left over for the dentist. Piece 2. The gap dot here is where most videos guess. We are not going to guess, because Statistics Canada already measured it. The Canadian Income Survey tracks what unattached seniors actually live on. Not what they want, what is in the account at the end of the year. For the 2023 year, the median after-tax income of an unattached Canadian senior was $36,400. That is the middle single retiree in this country. Not the poor one, the middle one. $36,400, after-tax, all in. And Statistics Canada breaks it into two halves for you. Government transfers, $22,900. Market income, meaning everything the government did not give you, $16,500. $16,500. That is the gap. That is what the median single Canadian retiree has to produce every year from something that is not Ottawa. Sit with that for a second, because it is a much friendlier number than $1.7 million and a much scarier one than it looks. Friendlier, because $16,500 a year is a target a normal person can actually picture. Scarier, because of where today's seniors get it. A big share of that $16,500 is a defined benefit pension from a job that no longer exists, or part-time work at 68, or both. If you are 45 and watching this, the odds you retire with a defined benefit pension are a fraction of what they were for the person who is 70 today. So the $16,500 that today's median retiree receives, you are going to have to build. Out of capital. Yourself, piece 3. The multiplier. To turn $16,500 a year of income into a savings target, you divide by a withdrawal rate. The convention is 4%. It is a convention, not a law, and reasonable people argue about it constantly. It came out of American data, it assumes a 30-year retirement, and it will be wrong for you in some specific direction. Use it as a ruler, not a promise. $16,500 divided by 4% is $412,500. That is the number. $412,500, and if you got there, you would be producing exactly the income the median Canadian single retiree lives on today, on top of your CPP and your OAS, not $1.7 million. $412,000. Now, if we stopped here, this would be a nice video and a useless one, because $412,500 is only true in one account. Piece 4. The account. This is the one that costs people their retirement, and almost nobody explains it before it is too late to fix. The Guaranteed Income Supplement is a monthly non-taxable payment for lower income seniors. Maximum for a single senior in the July to September 2026 quarter is $1,123.17 a month. That is $13,478 a year, tax-free, indexed, and here is the rule that runs it. GIS is reduced by 50 cents for every dollar of other income you report. Your OAS does not count in the test. Almost everything else does. The income cutoff for a single senior is $22,800, not counting OAS, and above that you get $0. Now watch what happens to our retiree. She is 66, single. With our target of $412,500 saved, she takes $16,500 a year out of it. Her CPP is the average, $11,104 a year. Version 1. The money is in a registered retirement income fund, which is what your registered retirement savings plan becomes. Every dollar out of a RRIF is taxable income, and it lands on line $23,600. So her income for the GI
test is $11,104 of CPP plus $16,500 of RRIF. That is $27,604. The cutoff is $22,800. She is over. Her GIS is 0, not reduced, 0. She pays income tax on the $16,500 on top of that. Version 2. Identical woman. Identical $402,500. Identical $16,500 withdrawal. The only difference is the money is in a TFSA. Her income for the test is $11,104. That is...
The withdrawal does not appear on her return, because as far as the CRA is concerned, it did not happen. Her GIS is $13,478 minus half of $11,104, which lands at $7,926 a year, tax-free. And she pays no tax on the $16,500 either. Same woman, same savings, same withdrawal, same life. She is $7,026 a year better off because of a label. Now flip it around, because this is the part that answers the title. If you are going to hold your retirement in an RRSP, you do not need $412,500. You need enough to produce $16,500 of spending, plus enough to replace the $7,926 of GIS you just erased, plus enough to cover the tax on both. Call the effective rate 18 to 20%, which for a retiree with credits is on the generous side. You need to pull roughly $30,000 a year out of that RRIF to end up where the other woman is. At 4%, $30,000 a year needs about $763,000 of capital. So there it is. The honest answer to what you need, $412,500 in a TFSA, or $763,000 in an RRSP. Same retirement, same groceries, same life. A gap of $350,000 decided entirely by which envelope you put the money in during your 40s and 50s. That is not a rounding error. That is a decade of saving handed to the Canada Revenue Agency for the privilege of not reading a rule. And there is a second thing about that RRIF, and it is the one nobody mentions while they are selling you the February deduction.
You do not get to decide when it pays out. The year after you convert, the government starts forcing money out of it. It is called the prescribed minimum, and it runs on a schedule. At 71, you must withdraw 5.28% of the January 1 balance. At 75, 5,082%. At 80, 6,082%. At 85, 851%. At 90, 11,092%. At 95, 20% a year, until there is nothing left to force.
You did not ask for that money. You may not need that money. It comes out anyway, it lands on your return, and it does every single thing we just walked through. It eats your GIS. And for the other half of this audience, the people who are thinking GIS has nothing to do with them, it counts toward the Old Age Security Recovery Tax, which in the 2026 income year starts taking back 15 cents of your OAS for every dollar of net income above $95,323, so both ends of the income ladder get hit by the same machine. The modest retiree loses GIS at 50 cents on the dollar. The comfortable one loses OAS at 15 cents on the dollar. Neither of them chose the timing. The TFSA has no minimum. It has never had a minimum. There is no conversion deadline, no factor table, no age at which anything is forced out. You can die with it full, and if you named your spouse successor holder, it lands in their hands intact and tax-free. That is not a small difference in a tax rule. That is the difference between owning your retirement and administering it. If this is landing, subscribe. I do the Canadian retirement math every week, the parts that actually move your number. So now, the real question. Can you get there? If you are 45. Your room by 65 is roughly $249,000. That is the $109,000 you have today, plus about $7,000 a year for 20 more years. You have $24,150 in there. Fill it. $583 a month, which is the annual limit divided by 12, for 20 years at 6%. You arrive at 65 with about $349,000, that is 85% of the target, in the right account, and it hands you roughly $14,000 a year tax-free and invisible. Add CPP and OAS and you are at the median single retiree's life, without a pension and without a landlord's permission. If you cannot do $583, do $300. Same 20 years, same 6%, you land near $218,000. That is not the target, it is also not nothing. It is about $8,700 a year, forever, that Ottawa cannot see if you are 55. Here is the honest part, and I am not going to dress it up. You have 37,610 years. Fill the room completely, $583 a month at 6%, and you land at about $164,000. That is 40% of the target. You are not getting to $412,500 in a TFSA from 55. The room does not exist, and neither does the time, but before that lands wrong, three things. First, $164,000 in the invisible account, drawn at 4%, is $6,560 a year that costs you nothing in GIS and nothing in tax. Against a RRIF, that same $164,000 is worth roughly half as much in your hand. You just doubled the value of your last decade of saving by changing a form. Second, the $412,500 is a single person's number. If you are a couple, you have two sets of room, 2 Canada pension plans, 2 old age security payments, and a household that costs less than 2 singles. Your per person target is lower. Third, the target assumes you have no pension and no equity in a home. If either of those is false, the number comes down, and for a lot of 55-year-old Canadians, both are false in the good direction. If you are 65. You have $51,244, which at 4% is about $2,050 a year. You are not building anymore, you are sequencing, and sequencing is where the money is now. If you are anywhere near GI's range, every dollar you move out of a RRIF and into a TFSA in a low-income year is worth 50 cents a benefit for the rest of your life. There is no return on earth that competes with that, and no one will call you to suggest it, because there is no commission attached to a form. So, the numbers. What Canadians say they need is $1.7 million. What the average Canadian actually has in this account is $24,150 at 45, $37,600 at 55, and $51,244 at 65. What you need to reproduce the median single retiree's life is $412,500 in the right account, or $763,000 in the wrong one. The $1.7 million was never the problem. The problem is that almost every Canadian is aiming a lifetime of saving at an account the government reads, while the account it cannot read sits there with $52,972 of empty space in it, waiting, indexed, and free. Your room is in your CRA account right now. It has been there since 2009. It does not expire, it does not judge, and it does not care how late you are. Go look at the number. That is the whole assignment. That is the picture. That is the data. That is what you need.